right. It's KP's Video News, y'all. And as I said in the previous article, I was going to discuss what's going on right today, what's going on right now as we speak. They have a mass. They're having mass arrests that are being spearheaded in the United States by Attorney General Bill Barr, and it's mighty coincidental and it's mighty funny that these mass arrests are happening right now. So I'm coming up with this story, and I'm letting you people know that this is part of their plan to basically disrupt the vote. So whatever you do, stay in the house. If you don't have to go out, stay in the house and be careful what you do out there, because they really truly want to arrest as many people as they possibly can to keep them from voting. And so far, just in the last couple of days, they've arrested all of 1,500 people, and that's just one city. So I'm letting you know this is what's going on. So I got to give you a history of the person, and then I'll get into the story a little deeper. You got William Barr, who is an American attorney, who is a two-time and a current attorney general, and he served as the 77th attorney general from 91 to 93 under George Bush, and has returned as the 85th attorney general in February 2009 in the Trump administration. And from 73 to 77, he was employed in the CIA, and he then served as a law school clerk. And then 1980, Barr worked for a law firm with Shaw, Pittman, and Potts, sandwiching the year's work in there. But he also, from 1994 to 2008, Barr did corporate legal work for GTE and Verizon Communications, which made him a multi-millionaire. So from 2009 up until 2018, he served on the board of directors of Time Warner. So he's been pretty active when it comes to that. So, you know, he's a longtime proponent of the unitary executive theory of nearly unfettered presidential authority over the executive branch of the U.S. government. In 1989, Barr, as head of the OLC, justified the U.S. invasion of Panama to arrest Noriega, and as Deputy Attorney General, Barr authorized an FBI operation in 1991 which freed hostages at Talladega Federal Prison, and influenced advocate for tougher criminal justice policies. Barr, as Attorney General in 1992, authored the report The Case for More Incarceration, where he argued for an increase in the United States incarceration rate. Under Barr's advice, President George W. Bush in 1992 pardoned 6 officials involved in the Iran-Contra affair, when they were selling drugs in the black community, selling cocaine in the black community to get funds to fund the Iran-Contra affair. So he was instrumental in pardoning the 6 officials involved in the Iran-Contra affair. Just like he became Attorney General for the second time. And so during his ongoing term, he has received criticism for some of his handling of several challenges, including the mischaracterization, summary, and selective redaction of the Mueller report, interventions in the guilty convictions and sentences of former advisors of Trump, Roger Stone and Michael Flynn, and allegations of political interference in the removal of Jeffrey Berman from his Southern District of New York attorney position. So, you know, it's some crazy stuff going on, I'm telling you now. I mean, these things are, you know, just going along with it. 1989, the beginning of his administration, George Bush appointed Barr to the... Damn it. Bush appointed Barr to the U.S. Department of Justice as Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Legal Counsel, the OLC, and office was functions as legal advisor for the president and executive agencies. Barr was known as a strong defender of presidential power, and he wrote an advisory opinion justifying the U.S. invasion of Panama and the arrest of Manuel Noriega. And so that he wrote the legal justifications for the practice of rendition so that the FBI could enter onto foreign soil without the consent of the host government to apprehend fugitives wanted by the United States government for terrorism and drug trafficking. Barr declined a congressional request for the full 1989 opinion, but instead provided a document that summarizes the principal conclusions. Congress subpoenaed the opinion, and its public release after Barr's departure from the Justice Department showed he had omitted significant findings in the opinion from his summary document. So, like I said, he's been doing a lot of stuff over here. And so this is, like I said, this is the series. This is the part I got to get to that I've been more inclined to. The case for more incarceration. In 1992, Barr authored a report, The Case for More Incarceration, which argued for an increase in the United States incarceration rate, the creation of a national program to construct more prisons, and the abolition of parole release. Barr argued that incarceration reduced crime, pointing to crime and incarceration rate from 1960, 1970, 1980, and 1990. A 1999 criminology study criticized Barr's analysis, saying so complex an issue as the relationship between crime and punishment cannot be addressed through simplistic an analysis as a negative correlation between the two very aggregated time series of crime rates and incarceration rates. The University of Minnesota criminologist Michael Torrey said the data in Barr's report was deceptively represented. If Barr had chosen 5-year intervals, then the data would not have supported Barr's argument. And if Barr had chosen to look at violent crimes specifically, as opposed to all crimes as a category, then the data would not have supported his argument. Barr said in the report, the benefits of increased incarceration would be enjoyed disproportionately by Black Americans. In the report, Barr approvingly quoted New Mexico Attorney General Hal Stratton, "I don't know anyone who goes to prison on their first crime. By the time you go to prison, you're a pretty bad guy." Barr's report influenced the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, which aimed to increase the incarceration rate. And that's exactly what they did. They increased the incarceration rates. And one of the reasons why they did it and increase the incarceration rates was to go with the term with the prison industrial complex. And so the prison industrial complex described the attribution of the rapid increase and expansion of the U.S. inmate population to political influence of private prison companies and businesses that supply goods and service to government prisons agencies for profit. So basically what Barr was doing was helping create the prison industrial complex, which makes a profit. So the government prison agencies for profit. The most common agents of the prison industrial complex are corporations that contract cheap prison labor, construction companies, surveillance technology vendors, companies that operate prison food services and medical facilities, correctional officers, unions, private probation companies, lawyers, and lobbyist groups that represent them. So there's a whole gamut of people that are making money off locking people up in prison. The portrayal of prison building expansion as a means of creating employment opportunities and a utilization of inmate labor are particularly harmful elements of the prison industrial complex, as they boast clear economic benefits at the expense of the incarcerated populace. The term also refers to the network of participants who prioritize personal financial gain over rehabilitating criminals. Proponents of this view, including civil rights organizations and the American Civil Liberties Union, believe that the desire for monetary gain through prison privatization has led to the growth of prison industry and contributed to the increase of incarcerated individuals. The advocacy group assert that incentivizing the construction of more prisons for monetary gain will encourage incarceration, which would affect people of color disproportionately at higher rates. And the history going back to following the war on drugs and the passing of harsher sentencing legislation by a letter that got created by Bill Barr, the private sector prisons began to emerge to keep up with the rapidly expanding prison population. In the late 70s, the Prison Industrial Enhancement Certification Program, a federal program that was initiated by the American Legal Exchange Council and the Prison Industries Act in 1979, this program legalized the transportation of prison-made goods across state lines and allows prison inmates to earn market wages in private sector jobs that can go toward tax deductions, victim compensation, family support, and room and board. However, you're talking about pennies. You're talking about pennies per hour. These people have no rights. They have no rights. So you have in 1983, the Corrections Corporation of America, CCA, was founded by Nashville businessman and would grow to become one of the oldest and largest for-profit prison companies in America, laying the groundwork for a transformation and layout of corrections facilities across the country. The 58 was established with the goal of creating public-private partnerships in corrections by substituting government shortcomings with a more efficient solution. The first facility managed by CCA opened in 1984 in Houston, Texas. As of 2012, the multi-billion-dollar corporation, now known as Core Civic, manages over 65 correctional facilities and boasts a revenue exceeding of $1.7 billion. And to run the most efficient prisons possible, CCA cut costs by reducing personnel and designing its prisons to include more video cameras for surveillance and clustered cell blocks for easier monitoring. For private prisons, labor is the biggest expense at 70% of the overall cost. As a result, CCA and other private prisons have become motivated to cut labor costs by understaffing its prisons. By 1988, the second largest for-profit prison corporation, Wackenhut Corrections Corporation, was established as a subsidiary of the Wackenhut Corporation. WCC would later develop into the GEO Group, and as of 2017, their U.S. Corrections and Detention Division manages 70 correctional detention facilities. And by 1990s, 1992, William Barr, then United States Attorney General, authored a report, The Case for More Incarceration, which argued for an increase in the United States incarceration rate. The passing of mandatory minimum sentencing and truth in sentencing legislature contributed greatly to the exponential growth in the prison population throughout the 90s. Mandatory minimum sentencing had a disproportionately high effect in the number of African American and other minority inmates in detention facilities. Throughout the 90s, the CCA and GEO Group were both heavily connected to the American Legal Exchange Council and were recognized for their substantial contributions in 1999. In 1994, Bill Clinton passed the Violent Crime Law and Enforcement Act, the largest crime bill in history. The Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act directly allocated an increase of funding by $9.7 billion for prisons and introduced a 3 strikes law, which subjected convicts of 3 offenses to exceedingly long sentences. 25 years to life minimum, amplifying the effects of mass incarceration and increasing the profit margins of the private specialized corporations such as CCA and the GEO Group and their subsidiaries. By 1985, 95, there were 1.5 million people incarcerated, an increase from the 949,000 in 1993. So I'm telling you, man, this situation, and the next step was the war on drugs has significantly influenced the development of the prison industrial complex, and the policy measures taken to categorize drug abuse as a criminal issue rather than a health issue have directly sustained the existence of the prison industrial complex. Since Reagan institutionalized the war on drugs in 1980, incarceration rates have tripled. In fact, the Federal Bureau of Prisons reports that drug offense convictions have led to a majority of the U.S. inmate population in federal prisons. Most policy analysts attribute the end of the prison industrial complex to lessening of prison sentences for drug usage. Some even call for a total shutdown on the war on drugs itself, and believe that this solution will mitigate the profiting incentives of the prison industrial complex. So it's just like you got the war on drugs, man. So I mean, the critics have stated the war on drugs has disproportionately targeted African Americans. As a result, it has also reinforced the institutionalized racism embedded in the prison industrial complex. Collected data illustrates that although the prevalence of illegal drug use among white men is approximately the same as that among black men are five times more likely to be arrested for a drug offense. And this racial disparity has led to prison inmate population of close to 50% African American demographic. So, you know, a little while back, when Attorney General Barr was brought before the Senate and for the House, and they were at basically at Barr's confirmation hearing. Kamala Harris said that the two largest private prison companies made $3.3 billion per year in profits, and there's a $1 billion private prison industry that profits off incarcerating people, and frankly, as many people as possible. By one estimate, the two largest private prison companies in the United States make a total combined of $3.3 billion. That's $1 billion with the B. And however, the company stated that they made $324 million in profits, not $3 billion. However, that's still $324 million in profits from locking people up in jail. And Kamala Harris asked Barr if he would commit to ending private prison contracts, and he didn't respond. Like I said, those two big groups, Core Civic and the GEO Group, are the two largest private prison companies. Together, they manage over half of the private prison contracts in the United States. And telling you, man, so they're making a lot of money off the backs of people. And so this is the other story that's going on right now. So I'm telling you, whatever you do, be careful. Whatever you do, be careful, because right now they are arresting people like crazy. And they're trying to arrest people before the election, and trying to sweep the streets and lock up as many people as they possibly can. So just as of August 19th, Attorney General Barr says the feds have made nearly 1,500 arrests in Operation Legend. So Attorney General Barr yesterday stated that federal agents helped make 1,485 arrests as part of the 9-city anti-violent crime operation. And Barr said 1,000 state fugitives were arrested during the operation, and 200 people faced federal charges, many of them for illegal guns. The Attorney General detailed the figures at a press conference in Kansas City, where the namesake of the operation they claim was shot in his home. The Anti-Crime Initiative deploys federal help to bolster local officials fighting a spike in violent crimes, especially after the anti-police brutality protests. So I'm going to say that again, especially after anti-police brutality protests over Minnesota police killing of George Floyd. Trump ordered federal agents into Chicago and Albuquerque in July to address a surge in murders. Chicago Democratic Mayor Lori Lightfoot initially vowed to resist that effort, but she initially bowed down. The operation coincided with anti-riot deployments in Oregon, but Barr did not offer details on arrests there. Operation Legends was expanded into Cleveland, Detroit, and Milwaukee on July 29th, to St. Louis and Memphis on August 6th, and Indianapolis on August 14th. The most federal charges are in Chicago with 61 cases. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, there are 32 federal cases. In Cleveland, there are 32. In Detroit, there are 22. And in St. Louis, there are 15. Barr said federal charges can put away violent criminals for longer periods of time. Federal industrial complex, remember that. He slammed what he said were often soft penalties in local cases. In far too many states, the sentences are too lenient and do not incapacitate these violent criminals long enough and do not provide a deterrent. Prison industrial complex, private prisons. They have to have people inside those prisons because they let a lot of people go due to the coronavirus. They let a lot of people go that was getting ready to get out anyway. They let them go early. Now he's trying to put people back in jail to make up for the ones that have been removed. However, they still want to flood the jails with as many people as they possibly can before the election day. And then after election day, it's like, oh, okay, you free to go. Well, what are my charges? You don't have any charges. Bye. So pay attention. Barr distinguished between tough enforcement of laws against small-scale drug dealing and those against violent crime. I think what people refer to as mass incarceration really refers to the harsh, long sentences for minor drug distribution, which he was the one that incorporated that, or small amounts of drug distribution, which led to a very substantial increase in the prison population, he said. I'm not talking about that now. I'm talking about getting shooters off the street. Garbage. Total garbage. Barr, who was Attorney General under George Bush, said what's happening these days in the country is we're going back to some of those old practices we followed in the 60s and the 70s, where there's a revolving door of justice and people are not being held. They are not being held before trial, and they're dangerous. They're not only being sentenced to prison, even though they're violent. So it's like they want to lock you up forever. They're trying to lock people up forever. The longer they keep you in jail, the more money they make off of you. They don't forget food, medication, clothing. Plus, they make money off of you while you're creating products. And they create more products than license plates. People think, yeah, the guy's in jail making license plates. They make more than license plates. Motorcycle parts, computer parts. They're even growing tilapia in certain penitentiaries. They have, oh man, there's so many different types of products that they make in prison. And you know, Barr was definitely an ardent champion of mass incarceration. So don't fall for the okie doke, folks. At the time when Bill Barr, when he first got involved in this stuff, it was about 850,000 people incarcerated across America's state and federal prisons. 850,000 people. Now you got close to 3 million people locked up in jail, and the majority of them are for drug offenses, the so-called war on crime, which was the so-called war on blacks, so-called war on poverty. They made a ton of money, and they're making billions of dollars off the backs of incarcerating minorities in this country. And it's like you went from picking cotton in the slavery days, now you are back into slavery again as a working for these prisons where they rent you out. They rent you out to go work on farms and go pick crops on farms and stuff. In California, they got prisons right in the middle of farmland up in Bakersfield, in the Northern Bakersfield area. So, this stuff has been going on down south forever. Most of your prison farms, that's what they used to call them down south, those were created after the Civil War. For what reason? To lock black people back up again and to get that free and cheap labor again. And here it is, 2020, and they're still doing the exact same thing. So back on topic, do what you have to do to stay out of jail. Stay out of jail because they want to lock up as many people as they possibly can before this election happens in November. Remember what I'm saying. Be careful. Do not go to jail because they will keep you until after the election is over, and then mysteriously they'll be like, oh, okay, you can go home now. Pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on because this is serious, and disrupting the Postal Service, locking people up in jail, the voter suppression in the most predominantly Republican states, where you're going to see a disproportionate amount and a disproportionate number of polling places where you go to vote. They did it already in Atlanta. They did it in South Carolina, and they did it in several states for the primary elections, where you had black people and minorities waiting in line for hours to vote, hours, because they dropped it down from 200 polling places all the way down to 6 in one area. That's 200 places you could vote. They dropped it all the way down to 6 places, so all those people had to all go vote at 6 places to vote. But if you went on the other side of town, they got 1,000 polling places on the other side of town in the Republican areas where you can just go in and vote in 2 minutes and be on your way out the door. This election here, if I have to wait in line 48 hours to vote, I'll do it. However, my state has determined that we're going to be voting by mail. But if your state hasn't determined that you're going to be able to vote by mail, vote early, go out for the early vote, have voting parties where you just take as many people as you possibly can and go to the polls. Try to get as many people as you can registered to vote, and do what you have to do, man, because I'm telling you, man, see, this is some serious stuff that's going on right here, right now. And people just don't understand that this whole system is not designed for people to especially minorities, to be able to have equal rights. So when you have somebody like Barr that has latched himself on to Trump and has basically denigrated the job of Attorney General. Prior to this, there was never an Attorney General that was doing what he's doing with the president. The Attorney Generals will usually have been up until now neutral. They didn't take sides. They didn't take political sides. But now you have an Attorney General that's taking a political side with a corrupt president that has been found to be guilty with has been impeached by the House, and just recently, a couple of days ago, with the Republican and the Republican Democrat investigation that they finally concluded, and it stated that definitely at least 6 people that were involved in the Trump campaign were in cahoots with Russia, and Trump knew about it. Cohen commented on that a couple of days ago, that he was in the room when Roger Stone told Trump about what he was getting ready to do with the WikiLeaks papers, and he agreed to it and ordered him to go ahead on and do that. So it's time to get out there and vote, folks. You got to get out there and vote, and vote in numbers, huge numbers, and avoid going to jail, avoid incarceration, because they're trying to lock you up before voting.
KP's Video News. It's KP's Video News, y'all.
Peace.